Right. Well, welcome everyone. This is a Getting Started in PreTeXt workshop. We're going to be talking about some of the things that PreTeXt can do for you as an instructor, especially if you're thinking about accessibility issues. We're going to talk a little bit about how to make some simple PreTeXt documents using PreTeXt Plus, all in the web browser editing experience, but also give you some ideas of where you could eventually take this. Before I jump into that, I'll let my co-hosts introduce themselves. Stephen, why don't you go first?
Sure. Hi, I'm Stephen Klontz. I've been part of the PreTeXt community since about 2018. Me and Oscar and David Farmer created the PreTeXt Plus service this past few months to try and get a turnkey web browser-based solution available to folks. But also, just a reminder, it's free and open source software all the way down. So you don't have to pay a cent for this if you want to get it installed and manage it yourself. I think Oscar's going to show us off here in just a moment. Pass the TN.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Tian, and I've been involved in pretext on and off on the authorship side around 2020, 2021. I've mostly used it to author and contribute to open source textbooks, but now there's new features that allows for smaller scale, lighter weight projects, more appropriate for coursework. And so I'll be demoing how to author some things in that later on today.
Excellent. And Christy Safransky will join us in a little bit here. She's just finishing up the class she's teaching. While we're waiting for her, I want to show you a little bit about how I use PreTeXt on a day-to-day basis for my own teaching. This is not the workflow that you might be able to do right away, but after doing it for a while, hopefully you can get there. So I do everything locally on my computer. I have Visual Studio Code. There's just a fancy text editor installed. And I have this for my Math 221 course this spring. I have a whole bunch of files. I'm designing an entire course with individual components. And I was just editing this worksheet element called Candy Coordinates for my linear algebra class. And when I get to the point where I like my content, I would just want to be able to take a look at that. And the way you do that, just like if you were doing a LaTeX document, you need to build it to see what the output looks like. I could do that by doing PreTeXt build on the command line. There are also buttons you could click here. If you click the PreTeXt button, you could build a target there. And once that runs and that is finished running, I could then type. It's almost done, I promise. Really close.
Chose a big project to demo.
Yes, right. So I have lots of documents in here. It takes a long time to build. This is the end of the semester, so I have my entire course there. Built, I could do PreTeXt view. And if I do PreTeXt view, it'll pop up a web browser for me, and I'll be able to see what I just built. So this would be the entire course. Once it loads, and that is everything. And the activity I was working on was Candy Coordinates. I could go there and I could see what I had built. When I like that, I would just go back to my terminal here and I would type PreTeXt deploy. And that will, when I hit enter, that will take my currently built PreTeXt project, push it up to GitHub pages, so it will be deployed at a public website. I can show you what that looks like. This is that public website. You can see it's at a regular URL that I've set up. When I go to the activity I was working on, I want to give this to my students somehow. What I do is I use an embed button here. And this just includes some custom iframe code that I'm going to put in my Canvas, my learning management system. I'm just going to copy that. I would go to my Canvas page. I would like maybe make a new page. Go to a Canvas shell. I would say this is the activity 9, maybe. And then paste that embed code in that I got from my PreTeXt site. And if I save and publish it, I would now have that particular page of my PreTeXt course directly in Canvas. And if students wanted to be able to print this out, they could click this print preview icon, and they'll get a nice version that will, when it prints out, will have page breaks as shown here, and it'll have some space for them to do work that I had specified. So this is a way that I can make accessible versions, because the HTML that PreTeXt produces should be accessible to screen readers and also people who have to navigate using a keyboard. And then they can also get a printable copy. I go to print here, you'll see it looks, well, that didn't work correctly, but when it's working correctly, which is, usually, it's because I set it to be A4 style. I don't live in Europe. I don't have A4 paper. I have letter paper. I get the nice version of it that students can print out or save to a PDF. And so I just do this throughout the semester, working on my own computer using the free open source version of PreTeXt. I could easily have done the same thing using a GitHub Codespaces, which gives me exactly the same interface, but I don't have to install, wouldn't have to install anything on my own computer then. You do need to know a little bit about how Git and GitHub works. It's not too bad once you get used to that. We understand that it can feel a little bit like programming when you're doing it in this format, which is one reason that we're excited about PreTeXt Plus, which we're going to show you today. That way you don't have to worry about installing any software, and you can just dive right in and start actually writing PreTeXt documents. So I'm going to stop sharing now.
Just a note, is that if you would like to create an account on PreTeXt Plus, use your .edu email address, and you'll have access immediately. And if you don't have a .edu email address, just post in chat your email that you signed up with, and I'll add you. We are still currently in beta, so we are limiting new accounts to fewer folks. But we're excited that anyone with an edu account can sign straight up now.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to stall a little bit longer while Chrissy gets here. She's probably walking back from her class currently. It ended 4 minutes ago now, so I don't know why she's taking so long. I will say that as we continue today, chat is enabled. So if you have questions of anything we go through, feel free to drop those into chat, and we'll try to answer them as best we can here. I just saw Chrissy jump in, so I will let Chrissy introduce herself and get us started with some PreTeXt Plus.
Hi, I'm Chrissy Safransky. I teach at Franciscan University of Steubenville in Steubenville, Ohio. And I've been using, I came to PreTeXt as an instructor using PreTeXt textbooks and thought this is really easy to use, it's better to read, there's better features. And so I really, when I was starting to make course notes, I was like, well, wouldn't it be great if we could make them more like PreTeXt? And so I started learning how to write PreTeXt. So I know I missed introductions. What else? Can you just situate me where I am right now?
You're just about to show them what a PreTeXt document looks like on PreTeXt Plus and talk about the structure of a document.
Then let's share my screen. Yeah, looks good. Okay, is this the one I wanted? Yes. So on PreTeXt Plus, you don't need to know anything about GitHub or a terminal or anything like that. What you have is some, we call this XML based language. You have this kind of XML language on the left and a preview of the principle of the output on the right. And So you can kind of see that this, the title of the whole thing is the structure of PreTeXt documents, and that's what the title of the section, and that's what comes up here. Then there's a paragraph, then there's some text, then there's some math thrown in, and the math, if you look over here, should look familiar. It is LaTeX, but it's hidden, it's instead of between dollar signs or double dollar signs, it's between M tags, and that /M, which is the opposite slash of LaTeX, that threw me off at first when I was like, why is mine not working when I'm doing the same thing as everyone else? Yeah, so those are like a begin tag and an end tag. So anytime you have a begin theorem, end theorem in XML language, you would just have a theorem and a slash theorem for your ending. Everything that goes inside there would be the theorem. For the aligned or centered stuff, then you use MD instead of double dollar signs. But my point right now is just that it's not so foreign, right? There was a learning curve for LaTeX as well, that you had to get used to what kind of coding produced what kind of output, and that PreTeXt has some of the same things going on with some overlap. So yeah, so we can align them. We use /amp instead of ampersand because reasons. But yeah, so an M row tells you that you're in that aligned row, and it's aligning at the equal sign. So what I kind of wanted to show is that this structure of it is what's important for accessibility. The fact that nothing over here said, let's make my theorem outlined in purple. Let's make my text bold. Right? Nothing here produced that over here, because that's a presentation choice. That's not something that a non-sighted reader needs to understand or use for meaning. So the fact that all that you're writing over here is what is the thing, and that you have less control over the output of how it looks like, that is actually key for an accessible document. That what matters is the meaning of it, the what it is, and not things about how it looks, not about color, not about bold or other things like that. I did want to show that by default, a lot of things, so like when you're reading, you might say, okay, this is the theorem, and you might want to hide the proof. All right, so the proof can be displayed or undisplayed. That's what we call a null. So there's definitions, theorems, proofs. There's a note. I have some exercises that appear like exercises. I did kind of want to show that a way to visualize what PreTeXt needs, right, what it is that it is boxes within boxes. So you have this box that's the title. You have this box that's in a P tag for paragraphs. You have this box that is another paragraph, and it's got some math and text inside of it. You might have a theorem, and within the theorem there could be a title, there could be a statement that goes with the theorem, a proof that goes with the theorem. Within the proof or statement there are paragraphs, right? So that structure of what goes within what belongs to what, that's also key for making things accessible. I think that's all I wanted to show from this. So again, the first thing I wanted to talk about was just the overview of what it looks like and why this needs to happen to be truly accessible. The next thing I wanted to show is perhaps a little more of a real project, that this is a modification of a worksheet that I have used in my classes, and I will share the source with you so that you can copy, paste, modify in a second. But first I just want to show what it is, right? This is written in PreTeXt. It is a worksheet. We can tell that it's a worksheet because of this print button here. I'll show that again in a second. There is this embed button, so you can copy and paste this embed code into your LMS. So what you would post for your students that's accessible is not a PDF. It's this, it's the HTML. That's what works with the screen reader. That's where it reflows, right? That's the accessible document. But you can click this button and get a more typical PDF looking thing. I have chosen to hide the answers, but I actually wrote it with answers, so I could unhide the answers and print a solution guide that goes with my worksheet from the exact same source. I don't have to keep track of different files. It's all in the same place. So I can hide that. I could, if I want, put a header on it and say, oh, this is for, what's the date today? April 23rd. This is for today in this course, and leave a space for students to write names on things. You'll notice that there is workspace. There's spacing between the items. And if you go ahead and click that print button, then it does give you the print dialog. And my computer is probably stressing over Zoom and sharing and everything, but it would show you the that it is a 2-page. Yeah, there we go. Right, it's a 2-page PDF. Oh, and that shouldn't be a 3-page. I don't know why that's doing that, but you could just print the first 2 pages. You could also change the size if I unintentionally. No, I don't know why it says custom. Anyway, so so I use PreTeXt, and I can create handouts that I'm going to use in class that are PDFs or, but paper. I'm going to use it on paper. But then what I post for students to online that is on Canvas, that's on my LMS, is the HTML. And so I don't ever need to worry about posting something that is inaccessible. Okay, I think what I wanted to do next was to go ahead and stick that link in chat so that you can, where did my Zoom controls? There. So that you can make a copy of this and follow along, copy, modify to your heart's content. So that, I think, should work for everyone who is logged into. I think anyone who, even if you're not logged in, you can see it, but you won't be able to make a copy of it unless you're logged in. How we doing? Following along? All good? All right, then I think just for a minute, I will just show some of the source here that produces this over here, right? That you can see that's my name, and that is how XML does commenting. So it's not % like in LaTeX, but it's this weird, less than exclamation mark dash dash, and you put the dash dash greater than at the end. This is a worksheet. That's what produces this nice printable thing here. It has a title. It has objectives. So within the objectives, you'll see I have a unordered list. That's the UL. And the list item means that that's my first item there. You can have list items with multiple paragraphs in the one list item. So I just went ahead and put a paragraph within the list item to be safe, even though there's only one line there. Then close that paragraph, close that list item, and then I have my second list item, and that's what produced this. Finish all that, close the ordered list, close the objectives, and now I've started my page. So I have made this an exercise. I have determined that this is as much workspace as should appear after the exercise. Notice you don't see that in the HTML version, only once you get to the print version does the workspace appear, because it's for working on. So and then there's a statement, there's a paragraph within the statement. We use side by side to align this way, side by side. We have matrices, that's all LaTeX, that should all be familiar. This gives me the aligned equations here. the MDs with the M rows and the slash amp that aligns it, very similar to LaTeX using ampersand. Yeah, I think maybe the only other thing I wanted to note is that here I used an ordered list with columns. And so that's rather than a side by side, I got 3 across that way. Here I was trying to give you code where you could see that on print it wouldn't matter what I wrote here as long as it was clear which thing I was referring to. But in HTML, PreTeXt knows that this is a reference back to this element. And so if I click on it, whoops, it's not going to work from there. Sorry. If I clicked on it back on the actual output page, maybe I should do that. Then it takes you to that item. Let me get back to where I was. So if I go to the output page and I click on it, it says, oh yeah, right, you meant this item. And that's often useful. Here I was just messing with how you can format the outprint of the cross-reference, the /ref/label kind of analogs there. So I think that is all I wanted to say. Did I miss anything I was supposed to talk about or hand this off to Tian?
Tian?
Yeah. Thank you, Chrissy. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. I just want to remind everyone, right now that what we're doing most of our demos today is in PreTeXt Plus, which is a somewhat stripped down version of the full Get PreTeXt functionality that is easier to jump into, especially for new authors. And so for those of us who are just trying to transition from things like Overleaf to writing PreTeXt, this is just like a quick and dirty, relatively way to be able to start authoring documents and get like some of the most of the functionality that you might need on a day-to-day basis. Some of the questions I've seen in chat for more sort of targeted or like specific things, a lot of those things are supported, but they're supported in the full version of PreTeXt, which if you're interested in getting support on that or in getting help from that, there is like a Discord or Google Groups and office hours that we'll discuss more at the end of the hour. But I'm just saying that the answer to your things are yes, but you might not see it today, depending on what those things are. And so what I was going to do today is a little bit of live authoring. I was going to show how one would like author some things that you might use in a worksheet. Christy's already shown the syntax for a lot of the math and things like that, which looks like very similar to what you would have seen in LaTeX, but I'll author some on the spot. And then also author some things that are kind of particular to PreTeXt that you might not be able to effectively do with Overleaf. And then what I'm going to close off with is embedding a PreTeXt document into Canvas so that we could, for the purposes of using it for a course, we can utilize that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start with some exercises. So we're going to create a exercises environment. And oh, look at that, it auto-completed, and you can give it an XML ID. If you want, I'm going to just kind of delete that for now because I don't plan on utilizing that that feature. And I'm going to start with an exercise. And so what we're going to write here is an exercise that has a number of different parts. So what we'll do is have like some introductory prose to introduce the exercise. I have an introduction here, and you can see this. It has this relatively newly implemented autocomplete feature, which makes authoring these sort of things very easy. It simplifies it and it builds in that sort of syntax for you, which is super nice. And so here are some exercises, and that is a great introduction to this. And so what we're creating now is an exercise that has multiple parts. And these parts are going to be called tasks. So here we'll have our first task, and we're writing like something like a worksheet or a handout for students. So you don't want it to be like a we're just going to write like a quick and easy problem for them. So let m so the m activates math. Let n greater than equal to 4 be an even integer. Show that there are primes P and Q such that N equals P plus Q. Nice little exercise to warm them up with. Well, and so we'll go ahead and build that. So we'll rebuild that, and then we can see that, right, we could see all of that we just wrote down here for them. So we have our first exercise, and it has task A. If I were to make a second exercise, and say this is the second exercise, missed a space here. Oops. But I'll rebuild, and we can see, right, that makes it part of something else. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to add a second task to this. So we'll say like classify the zeros of MD. So the MD gives it a it displays the math the way like double dollar signs would in LaTeX, and we'll just say zeta from math BBC to math BBC, where S maps to some n equals 1 to empty slash frac 1 and to the S. And we'll rebuild that. And that gives us our second exercise here. And after our first two exercises, so these are just demoing how we would author some math that we might like normally have written in LaTeX and Overleaf in particular, some short sort of statements that we might make as part of an exercise. But let's do something that maybe we wouldn't normally do in something like Overleaf. Let's give them a truly sort of difficult exercise here, and we're going to say evaluate 2 plus 2. And so now we've come up with a relatively difficult exercise for them, and we think that maybe they need some sort of like help with an exercise like this. So because what we're authoring here is HTML, that gives us some options on things we can do with we can include in our documents that might not make sense in a purely LaTeX document. So for example, I can create what I've done here is added a Sage element where the input is 2 plus 2. If I build this now, what it'll create here is a Sage cell here with 2 plus 2 filled in, and I can run and evaluate that here. This is particularly useful if you have uh, courses where you have computationally intense things where the computations are not the important part. Like if you have large matrices you want to take reduced row echelon forms of, including things like this can be helpful. I've included things like this in statistics classes or probability classes, or maybe you have like a cell with like Sage or R in it that you want to run simulations in. Those are great for handouts and in class activities that if you want to include those in, you could. So then the act of actually sharing this with students is very, very easy. Chris already demonstrated how you could print this out, like the way you would print out something for class. But if you wanted students to be able to like access this from their LMS, what we would do is we would save this. And then what I want to do now is share the output. And when I share the output, it gives me by default, the HTML version of this. And there's a share button here that I can click, and it just gives me the iframe code here. So now I can go ahead and copy that. And here I use Canvas at let me blow that up a bit, at our institution. And so I can just go ahead and embed in the iframe code into the HTML editing. If I come back here, what we'll see is as our preview, that document embedded in. And now if I save and publish this within my sandbox, what students would be able to see is this document here, so that you can author a worksheet in PreTeXt Plus and or whatever version of PreTeXt that you're running, as long as it's hosted somewhere. And then you can create those embed links, put them into your LMS so that your students can access them. And then all of the math is rendered in MathJack, so everything is accessible and screen reader friendly, and does what we want it to do. And so that's what I have for my end of it. Did I miss anything, Chrissy, Oscar, Steven? All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'll look in the chat now and see if there are things that need to be addressed.
Right, and now Stephen's going to show us some ways to author pretext documents, but use LaTeX syntax to do so. This would also be useful if you wanted to convert current LaTeX documents into pretext. So, Stephen.
Hold on. Now I'm no longer muted, and therefore now you can hear me. And so, all right. Yeah, so what I thought I would demo today is just kind of very naively taking a LaTeX document that I'm currently working on in Overleaf and see what it would take for me to get it into pretext via LaTeX style pretext. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my PreTeXt Plus account. Now, currently, there are Oscar, it's the PreTeXt Tools VS Code extension has support for converting LaTeX to pretext as well.
Yes, it
Uh,
does.
so that's so if you want to install things locally, that it won't let you edit it live in LaTeX. It's a one-time conversion. What's kind of neat about what we're trying to build here at PreTeXt Plus is the ability to actually maintain a project in what looks like LaTeX, but it's really a subset of LaTeX that's focused on semantic markup and accessible output. Um, so this is a research paper I'm working on. And so you can see when you create a new LaTeX style pretext document, it will autofill what looks like. Let me zoom in a couple of beats. It does, in fact, look like LaTeX, as we're familiar with it. And that's just to show that it's not just cheating by having just a few things at work. I'm going to take a literal full document that I've written in LaTeX and just, oops, close that, and paste that guy in right there. All right. And hit save one more time because sometimes it needs to catch up. Okay. Now, absolutely, this is not going to be a perfect automatic conversion. One thing to remember about LaTeX is that full LaTeX is a Turing complete programming language. Like you could do Lots and lots of there's a halting problem issue with us having a perfect conversion of all pretext into so all LaTeX into pretext. But there's of course conventional things that people do in LaTeX, and we are supporting as much of that as we can, and we're working to get more and more support as we go through as PreTeXt Plus and the PreTeXt project in general improves over time. I'm going up here to the top. So I just pasted the entire document header and everything in there. A lot of this is not going to be necessary right here. In fact, I'm going to just go ahead and delete everything other than perhaps I should probably get my math notations. I was asked earlier, can I put my macros in this document? Now, Oscar, in LaTeX style pretext, do I do put that in the preamble up here? So I'm going to cut this out. And I'm going to go ahead and I have some LaTeX macros I want to put in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put my LaTeX macros up here. So those are going to be saved. I don't need to do all this AMS stuff right here. Um, and if I want to take my title, I do need to cut that out and put it into the title of my document right there. So I don't need document or make title. I just need the content. The content of the LaTeX file is all I need. So I'm going to delete the begin and end document right there. All right. And if I hit save again, we'll see that it's more or less the what it was. I've got the new updated title here. I am a real mathematician writing in LaTeX. Oh, good, that worked. I have to keep moving around the Zoom thing so I can see what I'm actually writing for y'all. Um, okay, I'm writing in LaTeX. Look, Ma, some math. Oops. Fortunately, this is my computer right here that's running a little bit slow at the moment, which is why things are bouncing around, I think, on us for a little bit. But I believe if I save this, I might have the Pythagorean theorem. Oh, I almost got it correct. Or sorry, the quadratic formula. There we go. All right, so I can write what looks like my LaTeX that I know and love, and it works pretty darn well. I can have section like I normally do. Now, text IT, that's not very semantic, right? That's describing that I want my content to be in italics, which is useless for the unsighted reader, right? The reader that's taking a Braille conversion of the pretext document. But we do understand that late text IT typically that means you're really emphasizing something. If you're ever curious how the conversion goes, you don't have to actually convert it, but you can see here. I can click that and I see that really by text IT, I was trying to emphasize the term Legend of Zelda. Now, really, it's a title. So I probably actually don't know in LaTeX style pretext if we can do pub title. Not yet. So it's not going to be perfectly semantic, but it'll get the job done for a lot of things. Some things that are not currently supported, we don't have the citations, cross references to a bibliography set up just yet. Um, Part of that, actually, would that work if I had the bibliography not in BibTeX, but in a do we have that wired up yet?
I'm not sure for the LaTeX style pretext if
Gotcha.
we have any support for bibliography. Obviously, in regular pretext, you can do this.
Mhm. Absolutely. So you're going to see some things that I would want to clean up here. My cross references, my citations are not currently working at the moment. The other things that are currently, you see that I have written a TXZ picture. Now you can produce TXZ pictures in full pretext. That is not currently supported in PreTeXt Plus yet. We do have support for prefigure, which I believe is out of scope for this particular talk, but it is a pretext inspired markup language for figures, again, with that core emphasis on accessibility. Tixie Pictures produces inaccessible PDF images that you can put. If it's perfectly fine if your end goal is a dead tree document, but understand that you'll have to provide some very good alt text for this to be of use to your unsighted readers right there. So let's just scroll through here. Let's see here. We've got keys and locked doors. So how did I called those terms. Now that's actually a custom macro that I personally used to make my LaTeX more semantic, that I actually had defined in my preamble of my original LaTeX document, which I defined to be boldface, but it is a special LaTeX style pretext command that turns it into a term, which we can see here if I go back to convert to pretext and I scroll down to look for term. There we go, like that, which in this particular style displays as bold and italics. But you can see here that if I look for my definitions, which I define using begin definition, uh, again, you create this using any number of ways in your LaTeX source, but I believe we have support for begin def and begin definition. I believe both of those should be picked up just fine because they are very common. I lied to you, or maybe I did it too quick. Let's see. There it is. Yeah, I saved too quickly. I rebuilt too quickly. I was in the middle of I only edited half of the definition. So we try to be understanding of all the different conventions that people typically use for defining their LaTeX environments and supporting those in LaTeX style pretext. Again, of course, if I were to see what that turns into, it turns into the full definition, scaffolded with a statement, multiple paragraphs, terms, all the good business right there. All right. I think that might be pretty much it. You can just see that this was me. I did not prepare this document already. If I was thinking ahead, I would have stripped out all the images to hide the fact that we don't support static assets in PreTeXt Plus yet, but that will come, of course, over the summer here. A question in chat earlier, what's a null? Well, proofs are nulled by default, so we tuck those away right there. So if you don't want to dig into the proof, you don't have to right there. But you can see here that I have all my bespoke different, there's my concatenation markup that I put in the preamble, so it knows how to build my concat /concat right there. So all your macros from your math mode are still completely usable. And I think that's pretty much it, I think, for that. Were there any questions in chat that I should address?
No, but why don't you try actually doing a convert to pretext?
Of course. So let's say that I want to put a Sage cell in there because I can't do Sage cells in a LaTeX style pretext document. Well, I'll convert it to pretext. This is easy as just it'll create a copy of this project, so I won't lose my original LaTeX. You can see here with the kind of pretext that it'll spit out over here. I can create my copy, give it a beat, and now you see that I have my pretext XML right here. And let's say I wanted to add a Sage cell right here at the beginning of my 2 plus 2, hopefully will equal 4. It's my computer being slow here. And that was a very valuable use of processor cycles to compute 2 plus 2. But there we go. Maybe I'll do a good old for I in range 0 to 10, sum equals plus equals I. I should set the sum to be 0 to start with. Show the sum. What is that, 45? We're gonna find out. Oh, I have to actually rebuild. There we go. Oh, I can do summations in my head. That's nice. Thank Euler for that one. All right. Yeah, and that's my conversion right there. If I were to save this, I could share the output just like anything else. By using the share output page, it produces this nice URL. Notice that I did not have to convert to pretext. I could keep it in LaTeX style pretext. If I go back to my projects, here's my LaTeX style pretext, and it also can be shared. The output can be shared right there. I'm going to demo one other cool thing while I'm at it because we have this cool iframe that you can embed pretty much anywhere in your LMS. One way that I personally like to embed, if you use modules in Canvas, I usually will just take this URL itself. And if you want to see what this looks like, you can just paste it in here. You can see it just kind of gets rid of all the cruft. All right. And if I want to share this with my students, I'll come to my sandbox course here. Another way I like to share my documents, whether in PreTeXt or LaTeX style PreTeXt written in PreTeXt Plus, is to come here. I'll create an external URL, my accessible document, even though written in LaTeX. I'll add that item. I probably should publish it. And now my students, if I use the modules feature of Canvas, they will see here, even though I wrote this in LaTeX, here is, once everything loads, there is my document. I still need to clean up, of course, all the LaTeX artifacts that are not supported LaTeX style pretext at least yet, but there it is, and that is fully accessible. If I were to right click any of the math, you can see it has all the accessibility settings enabled by MathJax. And it all comes from the fact that it reads the LaTeX and produces accessible math ML. All right. What else? Is that anything else I should address from chat?
If you go back to the PreTeXt Plus, the PreTeXt style PreTeXt one, or
Sure.
XML style PreTeXt one, just want to point out that when you're editing that, if you're committed to writing in PreTeXt, and I enjoy writing in PreTeXt more than I enjoy writing in LaTeX, but if I have a LaTeX file, you can click on Import LaTeX there. And from here, you could either open a tech file or drag a tech file directly into that. And it will, when you hit convert, it will create the pretext. So if you just want to grab like one exercise from something you already have written in LaTeX, you can get that, and then you could go and copy and paste that, and then paste, copy it from here and then paste it into your document. If you hit copy and close, we'll just copy the whole thing. That is that's the workflow that I usually use for this kind of stuff. But definitely, if you like writing in LaTeX, our goal is that you will be able to continue to write in LaTeX using LaTeX style pretext, and it will convert the things you want. This is sort of a work in progress of what things convert. There's lots of stuff in LaTeX. We've tried to get everything that PreTeXt supports work. So you'll notice there are a couple places here where there are give feedback. And if you click there, they'll send us an email with your current source if you want us to say, "Oh, this isn't working right now." And that way we can try to make it better. Okay, I think at this point, we have about 10 minutes left. Let's just see if we can address some of the questions in chat, or if there are any questions that you all have. If you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to ask them here. Someone was asking about the LaTeX that PreTeXt produces. So one of the nice things about PreTeXt is that you can convert it to lots of different formats, not just HTML, but also you can make EPUB. You used to be able to do Jupyter notebooks. You can kind of still do that. You can make a Braille version of your things. The PDF that you do is done by converting to LaTeX first and then producing a PDF. The goal of that is to create something that you could print or send to a publisher to actually print. So there has not been much effort to try to incorporate the various accessibility features of LaTeX PDFs, partly because that seems to be quite a moving target and maybe it's settling down now. I've been trying to work on that a little bit. So all of that metadata and the tagged PDF stuff, that is not currently supported when creating a PDF version of your document. You want the accessibility of PreTeXt, you should be building to HTML, which in many ways is much better anyway, because I don't know if you've ever tried to read a PDF, even a tagged PDF on the phone, it's awful. Unless you have, the one PDF reader that can reflow text properly, you're much better producing HTML. Let's see. What other questions? If you have documents that are not in LaTeX, like in Word, or if you have an HTML document you want to convert, Pandoc is great for that. In fact, Pandoc can sort of convert directly to PreTeXt. What I recommend at this point is using Pandoc to convert documents that aren't LaTeX into LaTeX, and then using the LaTeX style PreTeXt to try to get a good approximation of the PreTeXt version. I understand that Pandoc can convert things into HTML. I am not sure about the accessibility of that, and I'm not sure about the navigation features and the more math features of that. Definitely, there isn't a nice way to do theorem, at least not out of the box, and have automatic numbering and cross references in the same way. We are working on a Beamer conversion from PreTeXt, from LaTeX for PreTeXt. You can make slides in PreTeXt. You get Reveal.js slideshows, which are nice HTML and JavaScript slideshows that should be pretty accessible. That's something that we need to look into more, I'm sure. So soon we'll have some sort of Beamer LaTeX slides to that system, and that will be included in PreTeXt Plus as well. And all of this stuff, the conversion stuff, you can do that outside of PreTeXt Plus as well. Currently, the PreTeXt Plus is the only way you can continue to edit in LaTeX and have it come out in PreTeXt. I haven't spent any time trying to get that to work in VS Code yet. We should probably talk a little bit about where to get support and where to look up stuff for documentation. I will go get some links if one of you all wants to explain our options for support.
Well, what I could point out is that we have, that's me messing up the different languages of Sage cells for somebody in chat. I'll get that fixed up for you here in a moment. But if you want to just know, how do I do a thing? I put the PreTeXt sample article even above the guide because I'm not a true believer. But the PreTeXt sample article is top of our help menu right here because it's not just any version of the PreTeXt article. We've talked about how sample article, we've talked how you can have multiple versions of the same document supported in PreTeXt. One of the versions of the sample article on pretextbook.org is the annotated version. Why is that really cool? Well, if I want to, oh yeah, I was messing up how to do Sage cells. All right, let's see here. I want to do computing integrals with Sage, huh? So here is a Sage cell. right here. And if I want to know how to get this code, I can just click here and view the source. If I scroll down a bit here, I should eventually see, here we go, Sage. There we go. I can copy that, put that into my document right here, hit the save button. Oops, well, I meant to hit the build button, but there it is, the save button as well. So now I can integrate sine squared x from 0 to 2, like so. I wonder if it's going to have here on this page a different language, because I was trying to find if I could do Python instead of. Okay, here's some R code. Perfect. All right, I want this R code in my document. So I'll just scroll up here to the first show. Okay, apparently I need to find it up in here. Language R. I put lang and not language. Okay, so if I go back over here to my document, if I want to change my language, it's language. Language. The default language is Sage. I keep hitting build save instead of build, excuse me. If I go back to, but here we can see now that it is running Python. Hope that's the correct way to do hello world in R. And then there's some computation in Sage.
Right. Well, I think we're about out of time. Shortly after this, I'm going to send out an email that has a bunch of links to things, including the PreTeXt guide and the sample article that we just showed. I also posted in chat just now a link to PreTeXt for instructors. Someone asked about best practices for naming files locally. If you want to work with a big project that has multiple chapters and sections, we have some suggested structure for that. And if you look at what is in the tutorial for PreTeXt for instructors, you'll see a version of that for creating course documents. So check those out. Also, in terms of getting additional help, we do have thrice weekly Zoom drop-in office hours, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And the link that Tien just put in there has our calendar of those events. We have a Google group to ask support questions if you want something more asynchronous. And maybe in between there is our Discord. So we encourage you to reach out with more questions there. And hope this was helpful. Look for that email from me soon. And hopefully we'll all see you soon on one of those support things. Bye all.
Thank you all for coming.